T-Bone and Heather in the morning on Star 98.3 and 97.7 The Bay.
8 minutes after 8 o'clock, 8:08. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. I have to tell you, I am giddy with excitement because I've been looking forward to this interview. We have Roberta Roper in the studio with us this morning. Mrs. Roper, as I will refer to her throughout the rest of the day.
And Jeff Gray is here as well.
And Jeff as well.
Thank you, first of all, for getting up and coming in. And you have been so busy in the month of April, and you've been traveling and doing, and here you are in our studio. We're very lucky to have you.
It's my privilege. Thank you for having us.
Sure.
So we met briefly, 2-3 weeks ago at the Pillars of Justice banquet that they had in Charles County. And you received a beautiful award, rightfully so. And so, I was familiar with your story, and we're going to get to all of that in just a minute, before the banquet. But I had never had a chance to, just say hi and talk with you. So we got that opportunity. And Jeff, you were there as well. And it kind of said, hey, would it be possible?
Is there any chance?
Maybe you could come and be in the studio, and you were kind enough to say, yeah, I'll come in. So Listen, that is fantastic.
Roberta, for people who don't know the story, can you tell us quickly, or take as much time as you want?
Yeah, take the time you want.
Tell us about the story and how you became involved in helping victims. You're
going
just
through your life.
Right. My husband was career Navy.
Mm-hmm.
We came back from a tour of duty in Great Britain, decided to put down roots in Prince George's County, built our forever home. Parenting was our most important life's work.
Right.
And we had 5 children, 5 beautiful kids. We're beginning to see the results, and Stephanie, our oldest child, was about to graduate magna cum laude from Frostburg State University. She came home that late March, early April.
Now, what time frame are we looking at? What year?
This is April 1982.
82. All right.
43 years ago.
Wow.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
In her words, to recharge her batteries. She was getting ready for her senior show. She was a very gifted artist, and she meant to go out with some friends from high school and her best friend and roommate from college, and we never saw her again. I remember that evening, the usual mom litany, don't do this and do this.
Right.
And she said, Mom, I never I don't engage in risky behavior, but I'm not going to be a prisoner to fear. And I said to her, Stephanie, if anything happens to you, I can't live.
Right.
And look at here you are.
And here I am.
So
43 years later.
So then the worst thing in the world that could happen to her happened.
Her car became disabled on a country road in Prince George's County. Of course, this is the days before cell phones.
Sure.
Right.
And 2 men came, and instead of helping her, at gunpoint kidnapped her and would take her to St. Mary's County, and over a period of 5 hours would repeatedly and brutally rape and torture her. She overheard them saying that she had to be permanently silenced.
Right.
And so she made one last attempt, actually in this community,
Mechanicsville. Yeah.
She made one last attempt to escape. They captured her, shattered her skull with a logging chain, then shot her to death. Then they doused her body with gasoline and set it on fire. Later, we learned that they were beginning to dismember her body to prevent identification.
That's a special kind of mean there.
And what were the ages of the killers?
The older man was 26, and the younger one was 17.
So that thrust you into the judicial system. And
shattered everything we believed that we trusted.
Right, because most people, you don't, it's like so many factors in our life. You think it works one way.
Right.
And then you get into it and you go, oh, that's not at all how it works.
No.
And so you've got this horrendous tragedy that you're dealing with. And then you find yourself dealing with the hurdles of our legal system, which can be daunting.
While dealing with grief.
Right, exactly.
And then discovering that the system you believed in and trusted is going to re-victimize you. And that's what happened.
What What were you hoping? So you're going through this, and you're running into roadblocks, and you're running into sticking points, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you said to yourself, I'm not putting up with this. This is nonsense. I'm going to do something. How do you get from there to where we are today?
Well, first of all, what we wanted then was to discover the truth.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Even the painful truth.
Right.
We were prepared for that. We wanted by our presence to show that Stephanie's life, she lived, she was loved, and her life mattered. And having been shut out of that process was crushing. Our 4 surviving children said, Why were we denied the right to observe the trial? Why were we silenced
now something
from
simple
speaking at sentencing?
Okay. Something is... I say simple as that. It's not.
But you have to remember, this is 43 years ago.
43 years ago.
The Dark Ages, when crime victims had no rights.
So the stuff that
you
everybody...
couldn't even go to the trial and sit.
No.
And watch the trial. They forbade you from being in the courtroom.
We were the state's opening witnesses to set the stage, if you will, because we had a last family meal with our daughter. But after that, the defense used the rule on witnesses. And we were shut out of the courtroom.
Shut out of the process.
And I stood outside a courtroom door with my face pressed to the window, trying to see and hear what was happening.
Of course you did. And then like making a victim's or family statement, that wasn't an option either.
At sentencing.
No. It was a recently passed law that year, but it was discretionary. So if the defense made the argument, and they did, that anything I had to say was emotional, irrelevant, and probable cause for reversal on appeal, then the judge agreed. And
anything that you had to say was emotional. Yeah, no kidding. Well, how could it be anything but that?
And that's why the prosecutor urged me to speak. He said they don't know anything about who Stephanie was. They couldn't show photographs. They don't know what the crime's impact was on her family, her community, which linger even to this day.
I can't believe there was a time where that wasn't part of the process.
Well, you're looking at the woman right now who worked tirelessly to change it.
Now, yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So many things that we need to cover.
You were angry.
So how did you go about saying to yourself, obviously this is a horrendous miscarriage of justice here, and you said to yourself, I'm going to do something about this, and obviously driven by the emotion of the event, but
it was a joint response from my husband and I. We quickly began to see the effects of grief and trauma on our 4 surviving children. One ran away briefly and didn't want to be an American. Yeah. Another said, I can't pledge allegiance to the flag any longer.
Right.
Because liberty and justice for all doesn't apply to our family.
And Vince served in the Navy, right? And Vince was in the Navy and served. So, you know, that's...
It was crushing. And we said, how can we give our children hope when we don't have any?
Right.
And so, naively, and I say naive because we had no clue what we were embarking upon.
Right.
But
so when you started down that path, were you greeted with open arms from the judicial system, or was there pushback?
Oh, there was terrible pushback. What we got open arms from was our community.
There you go.
The victims. What was the first thing you wanted to accomplish? You're angry. You're sad.
Obviously, the first thing was to get these people in jail. But beyond that.
Well, they were convicted. One pled guilty, but the other went to trial and was convicted. Both got 2 life terms plus 20 years to be served concurrently. That meant parole eligibility in 11 and a half years.
That's not good.
11
and a half years?
No. For what was seen then as the most heinous crime committed in our state.
Hold on.
And there was public outrage at that.
11 and a half years?
Yeah.
I can get that for a fishing license.
Right.
I know.
So what happened after that?
Our community, as I said, embraced us and supported us. The man who is our current executive director was a third-year law student. His father was one of our legislators.
Good.
And he became our first lobbyist. We sat around a friend's kitchen table.
Beautiful.
and we organized. We got incorporated as a nonprofit. We set upon certain goals. As I said, in 1982, crime victims had no right to information, no right to attend a trial, no right to be heard at sentencing. There were no community groups to support them or guide them.
I don't even know how
they
that
were
happens.
on their own.
We're talking with Mrs. Roper, who is one of the key members who started what is now called the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And not by design, not by this wasn't some kind of life goal that you grew up with.
No. I would do anything not to have done that.
Exactly.
Life.
But you found yourself in that position, and you had the fortitude to carry on with this.
What was the first law you wanted changed? What was the first thing you said, outrageous, we need to work to get this changed?
Victim impact statement.
Okay.
That it not be discretionary.
So you can say you can stand up and say, this is who she was, this is what it meant to us, this is what happened.
Today, a victim has the right to present both a written and an oral statement, and the court must consider it.
Nice.
That doesn't be that they have to also just automatically consider it, but they have to listen.
But it has to be part of it.
It has to be part of the process. And to me, that is one of the most significant pieces of legislation. And the other one was an amendment to our state constitution in 1994 that enshrined these rights in our state's the highest law of our state, the Constitution of Maryland. And today that has changed the whole culture of the system. I mean, I was viewed as an emotional mother who didn't understand the criminal justice system. I was a wife, a mother, and a teacher.
Offensive. I mean, seriously, you want to talk about insult to injury. How offensive was that when you were going through that and they just went, hush up now. We'll take care of it.
I thought, no, I can't be. No, it wasn't acceptable. And I saw the prospect of losing my family.
Right.
Our marriage. And my husband and I chose to take action, to do whatever it was in our power to change the way crime victims were treated and other families like our own.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Did
you get to a point in this process where you thought to yourself, down the road after things got, you managed to get some things in place where you thought to yourself, okay, time to pass the torch now?
Well, we've been doing that for a lot of time. I've retired many times.
Okay.
I was the executive director for 20 years, and that's when we became the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. But I very early on concluded that it was not something I could walk away from.
Right.
And unfortunately, what's old is new again, because we were just talking about your dedication to legislation and making sure victims are heard and seen in Maryland. And now one of the perpetrators of your daughter's just horrific crime going to possibly use legislation to get out. Is that right?
Yes. Maryland approved legislation, the Juvenile Restorative Act, in enabling someone who was a juvenile when they were convicted of the crime or pled guilty.
Even though tried as an adult.
Yes. He pled guilty, but yes, he was going to face trial as an adult, and who had an opportunity to go before the Maryland Parole Commission, but chose not to do that. And chose instead to circumvent that process and go through the courts. And so last December, we were in a court in Anne Arundel County, which his defense argued that he was a candidate for release. And as I said, I was in a place that some people might understand. I really didn't care so much about him. Long ago, my husband and I had forgiven both of Stephanie's killers, not because we forgave them or rather forgot their crime, or we were excusing it or not holding them accountable, but they were not going to hold us hostage.
There you go. Taking it back for yourself.
Right. They were not going to steal our family's joy. And that's what happens in many cases. And so it wasn't so much what happened in the court, But for me, it was the first time in 43 years that I could tell this man what his crimes had done to our family.
Right.
And what was his response? Was there one, or just...
Well, he actually trembled when I told him that we forgave him. And I said, why now? Why didn't you use the parole commission process? Why now, the courts? And he said he was afraid of me.
I'm afraid of you, Roberta.
A little bit afraid right now.
So this legislation now, you had a hard time during the General Assembly, kind of falling on deaf ears.
There was another bill that unfortunately has devastating potential consequences to public safety and to victims and survivors of violent crime.
And explain that bill.
HB 853 was passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Moore, which entitles someone who was between the ages of 18 and 25, who has served 20 years, may not request, but may demand that a court hold up to 3 hearings to consider their release. And it was so sweeping. I mean, you just can't say a crime is a crime is a crime. They're all very different.
Right.
Consequences are different. And this has the potential to create more crime victims and survivors in our state. But despite our appeals, and we kept saying, if your constituents knew the potential consequences through this, they would be appalled, but they didn't.
We're going to talk more with Mrs. Roper and Jeff, who's here as well, about all of these things and this new bill that is going through, because it's certainly something that people need to be aware of. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to do another segment with you, and I think we will. We'll take care of that. We got to do a little bit of something, and then we'll have another. Can you stick around for another segment?
Sure, we can.
You got legal things you need to go out and rough some folks up? Okay. Hold tight for a second. Let's do a little business, and we'll get back with you.
Here's T-Bone and Heather on Star 98.3 and 97.7 The Bay.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Wednesday. Glad to have you along with us. It is 25 minutes in front of 9 o'clock. Thrilled. That's not big enough word. But we are excited to have Mrs. Roper in with us this morning. And Mrs. Roper is one of the key people, if not the key person, who has brought together and got going what is now called the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center through no... grand design.
Herculean efforts.
I mean, yeah, it's a Herculean effort. It's off the chart. But you know, this isn't some kind of, as I said before, this isn't, you didn't wake up one day and say, by golly, I think I should do this.
Yes.
I'm going to stop selling Tupperware. I'm going to go out and do this. That's not what happened. You found yourself in one of the,
you want to survive.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you did. And we wanted to talk a little bit about, people who are out there and maybe they're looking for help, and what do they do? There's something has happened and they need to find you guys.
There's no lack of victims. How do victims?
Sadly, there are not.
Yeah.
We have an 800 number, 1-800-VICTIM-1 or 301-952-0063. Call us and talk to one of our advocates. We have both crime victim advocates and attorneys on staff, prepared to help them utilize comprehensive free services, education about the criminal justice system, education about their rights in this process, what they need to do to exercise their right, accompaniment at trial or other criminal justice proceedings.
Oh, that is great.
Because it's not like what you learned in school or you watch on TV.
It's not Law and Order,
no,
right?
It's not Law
you walk in there and
it's not resolved in an hour.
It's never resolved in an hour, right? And you walk in there and there's a judge and it's daunting and there's this courtroom and there's all these things and procedures and
That's
a
right.
lot of the dialogue that's taking place between the attorneys and the judge. You don't even know what they
speaking a language they don't understand.
It's all Latin and weird. Right. We don't know what's going on.
So that's really critical to have someone prepared to help them and comfort them and be with them. And then, as I said, legal representation today is equally important because more than 100 laws have been passed for victims' rights and services in Maryland. That doesn't mean they're always enforced. So an attorney is present to represent their interest and not to interfere with the prosecution of the case,
right?
But simply to ensure that,
and maybe just along the process. Oh, so okay. Here's what that means. To explain what the heck is going on.
Exactly.
Because it's moving. I mean, it's moving fast,
or not moving,
fast enough.
Because it can consume years. There are many delays that victims and survivors have no control over, and so no one should suffer in isolation. And that's where we are. We are a statewide organization prepared to help any victim or survivor of a victim to get through this.
Did you think at any time during this process that maybe the system was designed that way to kind of win the war of attrition, that like maybe the people, the victims' families and those folks on the other side would tire out, would give up, would wear down just by the grind of it? Do you think the system, did you get the idea that the system worked that way?
I think that's an unintended consequence.
Intended, that's the word,
unintended.
Right. Oh, unintended.
I don't think it was designed to wear people down.
Okay.
I think that's one of the benefits of our work, to see how the culture has changed. Today, I think there are lots of good prosecutors and judges who respectfully follow the law.
Good.
On the other hand, there are those who don't, and you have to be eternally vigilant.
What do you do, Roberta? What do you do about the judges? Did you ever see the docket come up, or an attorney said, "Okay, Roberta, this is the judge that's going to hear this," and did your heart skip a beat and you were like, "Oh no, well, I don't stand a chance"?
Well, not me personally, no, but for others, yes, I have seen that, yes. And but as I said, that's the value of having a staff attorney to represent the interest of crime victims, because they, no less than the person who has committed the crime, deserve to be treated with respect and compassion and have their rights respected and honored.
Jeff is here as well, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit because you have an entire career in law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And working in cold cases and stuff like that. How did you get involved in this organization?
It actually started in April of '82 when the incident was first being looked into. A dear friend of the Ropers, a Corporal Pat Grogan, God rest his soul, who was on the Prince George's County Police Department, oversaw the school patrol program and knew Stephanie as a volunteer. So when the car was first found, and I was an Upper Marlboro resident, also lived nearby, he called me and others and said, "We need to search. We found a car. We don't know where she is." Of course, we did not know what had occurred yet. And Pat, being a dear friend,
so you were there at ground zero, almost day one.
To a degree, but I did not do any of the investigative aspect. It was, like Roberta said, it was community.
Yeah.
And I was a resident of that community. So off and on throughout the years and decades I served with the Prince George's County Police Department, the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office, I would volunteer. Bud Marshall, God rest his soul, who was State's Attorney in Prince George's County, lived in my neighborhood, and he was one of the stalwarts of the organization. Kurt Wolfgang, our current executive director, he and I were friends from court, with going to court all the time.
Sure.
And I just was aware of it. I had several cases that I handled as a young detective. Pretty much my whole career has been investigations, investigative supervisor, and I'm a bit of an anomaly. I am a victim's advocate.
Okay.
I always have been. So whenever I could, I would try to offer my time, services, expertise, if you want to say.
Yeah.
And I was honored that 6 years ago, Kurt called and said, "Jeff, have you got some free time?"
It's a matter-of-fact idea.
Would you like to help? And knowing Miss Roper and knowing the organization, I mean, that was a decision I didn't have to think twice about. I have been, over my career, over 25 years, an MPCTC federal instructor. So I train law enforcement officers. And one of the things I emphasize is victimization and victims' rights.
Now that's got to be a line to walk as well. When an officer is investigating, so walk me through that process. What are you teaching them about? Hey, be cognizant of this, but they also have the investigation, the nuts and bolts of getting in there and, I don't know, whatever I see on TV, dusting for prints or whatever you guys do. So there's that part of it as well. So the other part that you're instructing them on is what?
Well, it starts with ethics in law enforcement, professionalism, and then the victimization I start with. I teach a 4-day course, which is a little bit of a crash course, but again, for basic investigators. There are a lot of agencies here in Maryland, especially in Prince George's County, our municipalities. They can't have a dedicated investigator. They can't have or afford a victim advocate. So I created 20 years.
There's no victim advocate.
Well, some have and some don't.
But it's not standard, everybody.
Oh, no. It's financial, sir. Okay. Now, our state's attorney's offices in Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's, Prince George's, and Anne Arundel, others I've worked with throughout the state, they have very good personnel, victims advocates. But we all know everything is the mighty dollar.
Yeah.
And what's going to give first. So what I had extended to these agencies is let me instill the proper ethics of a thorough investigation. Everyone, even suspects, should be treated with dignity and respect. And the ultimate goal, though, is, in my mind at least, sir, and Heather, is garner that information so that victim never has to see that you-know-what again.
Right.
And hopefully the court system will go through. So I was blessed with a good confession rate throughout my career, conviction rate, and many a times. Now, they might have had to go to court because attorneys and even suspects work the system.
Right.
If they show up and everyone is there, need a continuance. And the court's granted.
Hey, Jeff, you also work cold cases.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me, talk about, that has got to be one of the toughest jobs, especially even like considering Stephanie's case where it's 42 years. I mean, those men were convicted and they got theirs, but how do you treat a cold case that is years old? Is there hope for the family? Is there any closure at all at the end of the, rainbow for these folks?
Unfortunately, most times, Heather, there isn't. And if I may make a minor correction.
Sure.
There is never closure.
Never.
No matter what level the crime is, once a victim is victimized.
It's a scar, isn't it?
For life. For life, yes. And what I do, now, of course, my title is Cold Case Homicide Investigator, and that's one of my expertises. But I will address any case, any open case. Matter of fact, I will even address through our organization with their acknowledgement and blessing, helping to reestablish lines of communication with that law enforcement agency that maybe doesn't pick up the phone all the time.
Right.
What I also try to instill in my detectives especially is there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, T. Hi, Heather. Detective so-and-so. Sorry I don't have anything new with your case, but I haven't forgotten you.
There you go.
I'm still working the case."
That has to go miles.
It truly does. And Roberta oversees our homicide support family members group, and I make an appearance at least quarterly at the meetings to once again avail because they are still clinging to hope.
Right. Sure, of course they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap things up here, one more time, Ms. Roper, if you would, how do people who are out there and maybe find themselves in need of the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center, how do they get a hold of you guys?
Well, I gave you the phone number. I'll give it again. 1-Victim-1, 1-800-Victim-1.
There you go.
301-952-0063. And go to our website, www.mdcrimevictims.org. Call and contact one of our advocates. No one should suffer alone. Sadly, there often is a public perception that crime happens to other people. It's not going to happen to good people.
It's not going to happen to me, right?
Right. You know? And we invite people to visit our conference room in our office. 3 walls are filled with photos of victims whose families we have served, and it represents like the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But all of those people lived good lives. They deserved to live good, continue to live good lives, but they were robbed of that. And we again think that it's going to happen to someone else, but not us. But crime does not discriminate.
Hey, Roberta, before we let you go, is there anything that makes you nervous, a fight in the future in the Maryland legislation that maybe our listeners can help with writing a letter or calling the governor's office or calling their delegates? Is there something on the horizon where you're like, this cannot stand?
Well, we are going to continue to monitor the consequences of the passage of HB 853.
Right.
And the best way the public can get involved is being a member of our organization or getting our information.
Can somebody just donate to your organization?
And also financial support, because like every nonprofit, we struggle.
Well, of course, right, because you guys are a nonprofit.
That's exactly right.
And so if somebody...
We don't have the luxury of unrestricted funds to do whatever.
Right.
So we have to depend on grants to do specific things. But
the average person could just send you a check, yeah?
That's exactly right.
Okay, then.
And,
all right.
And we welcome that.
Now we're getting somewhere.
If they look at our webpage, they can stay connected to see what's going on, how they can be involved, how they can make a difference for their neighbors.
I can't thank you enough for coming in today.
Oh, it's my honor to be here, and I thank you for spreading the word.
All right, listen.
Thank you, Jeff, for driving,
Jeff,
too.
thanks for coming in, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you for all you do.
Yes, I was promoted to that job driving Miss Roper.
Such a great organization, and I guess is one of those things where hopefully you'll never need it, but if you do need it, it's there, the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And if you'd like to donate to it,
just get to their website. It's a great website. Your rights are priorities. That's what they're all about.
That is what it's all about.
Yeah.
So
one last thing, if I may, Tia and Heather. We also do proactive outreach education, and that's one of the things we need the funds for. Well, community awareness, safety planning, and from the array, child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, crime victim period, identity theft. Right. Also with the training of law enforcement. I have and still teach law enforcement agencies throughout the state, and also we have proactive programs, child and senior citizen identification kits, fingerprint identification kits. And we've distributed in the past 2 years over 200,000 kits throughout the state of Maryland. Now, not just literally me or our organization, but that partnership with law enforcement, fire departments, churches, schools. So again, if there's ever, and we appreciate it, anyone that would like to donate or would like assistance from us, please call, reach out, and they can ask for me, and I'll call them directly or email directly. When we can help, we're there.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Folks.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, as we move forward, if something comes up or you guys feel like you want something is going on that people need to be aware of,
come in.
This is a resource for you. Please make use of it, okay?
But you're going to have to get up early, Mrs. Roper, again.
You are going to have to get up early. You are. 10 minutes in front of 9 o'clock. It is 8:50. Let's check the weather.